So then folks, experiment time. We've got a really interesting day ahead of us today. I'm here at Meadowlands and I've come here today to try something out. Now, quite recently I've been having some really good results fishing method feeders, and I've been flavouring the pellets that I've been putting around the method feeder, and I think it's been making a difference. But you know what, I can't be 100% sure it is making a difference. So I wanted to come and pit flavoured pellets against standard pellets. Here at Meadowlands, I've bought a bag of the micros, the fishery pellets, and I've flavoured some with the SwimStim Cool Water F1 Soak. A really sweet smelling flavouring. It's a water-based flavouring. So what I've done is I've soaked the pellets up to a reasonable consistency, not quite as damp as I'd like to use them, and then split that batch in half and then added a good glug of that soak to one of those batches. Added some more water to the other batch, so I've got 2 pots of pellets that are the same consistency, but one pellet has obviously got the pellet soak on, one pellet's pretty plain. Now, I've bought with me 2 exactly the same identical sets of kit from rod, reel, mainline, feeder, hook. Everything is absolutely identical. I've bought some really simple hook baits, just 6mm pellets that I'm going to band, and what I've done is I've tried to make this test as fair as possible. So I've sticked up both rods at 30 metres, so I know I'm casting exactly the same distance. I've picked 2 markers on the far bank that I'm going to cast to. They're about 15 metres apart, so my feeders are landing 15 metres apart. If things sort of go heavily one way on one of those rods, what I'll do is we'll swap them over. We'll do a bit of an experiment, see if we still get the same results by swapping over the feeder, swapping over the bait, and doing things that way. What I want to do is try and actually see if flavourings do make a difference. I think it's a really interesting way of doing things. I can't think of any other way of making this a fairer test. So let's chuck out the rods and see how the day goes. Right folks, we're ready to go. So really simple stuff. I've picked those 2 far bank markers. I've got 2 bushes on the far side that I can chuck to. I've got a right hand swim, which I'm going to use with these unflavoured pellets. And I've got a left hand swim, which I'm going to use with the left hand tub, obviously with the flavoured pellets, those pellets with the pellet soak on. So I'm going to load the feeder. I don't want to cast in at different times, so load the feeder up using a mould. Obviously I'm loading the feeders exactly the same way. I'm not putting loads on the feeder today, I'm just literally just to the brim of the mould. So obviously left hand swim, flavoured pellets, that's what we've got to remember. 30 metres on that line clip. I'm going to cast to the same pot, same part of the swim all day. I don't want to start chasing fish today, so I'm going to cast 30 metres, whether we're getting bites or not, and try and make the fish come to us. So that's the flavoured pellets gone out. And now for the unflavoured pellets. Slightly to the right, there we go. Perfect. Let's see what happens. Should be a really good day, this should. Hopefully settle a few things going on in my head. And I know that obviously everyone I speak to about flavourings are all a little bit sceptical, so it should be really interesting, should be a really good day. While we're waiting for a bite, you've got a few seconds, why don't you click subscribe, because no doubt I'll be doing more videos like this in the next few weeks. And obviously by subscribing you'll get notifications straight away when one of those videos pops up. Again, that's my cheeky side coming out. You don't have to, no one's forcing you to, but it'd be nice if you did. Couldn't tell you which one's going to go first. I wouldn't want to bet on it.
How many lives does it take to realize what's going on? How many years have gone by? When will I
So then folks, first chuck on the flavoured pellets, a bite straight away. So it's looking like, if I get this fish in, it's going to be 1-0. Not a big fish, I don't think. It's actually swam to the right. So I've hooked it to the left, it swam over the right hand rod. Not a big fish at all, I don't think, for this lake. There's some massive fish in this lake. But that bite came after 7 minutes. Get the old 7 minutes on the stopwatch. Lovely little common carp. There we go. 1-0 to the flavouring. Very interesting. So what I'm going to do now is reel in that other rod, and then I'll chuck both rods out at exactly the same time, and obviously we'll get a true reflection then of whether one's working faster than the other. Obviously, to make it a fair test, I'm making sure that I cast in at the same time with both rods, because obviously I don't want any of you guys to think that one swim's getting more bait because I'm casting more frequently. So every time I catch a fish on a rod, bringing the other rod in, that's the plan anyway, bring the other rod in and recast that one as well. So I've already moulded the feeder for the right hand rod, the unflavoured pellets. We'll chuck this one out. Perfect, put him down. Pick up that. Slightly to the right. Perfect, wedge him in there. Hopefully that won't get pulled in. Then we're fishing again. Set the stopwatch and we'll see which one goes first this time. I think it's really interesting just to see, especially early on in the session. I expected maybe it 50-50 early on in the session, whether the unflavoured pellets went or the flavoured. You know, I like to think that flavourings work later on in a session, but it's interesting that the first rod to go was the one with the flavoured pellets. So we'll see what happens this chuck. There we go, no mistaking that bite. So, interesting once again, the unflavoured side has gone this time. Again, not a big fish, I don't think. It's nice to get some bites though. To be fair, I'm expecting to get bites on the unflavoured pellets, but they're really good to see what wins at the end of the day. And also fish stamp. I think the stamp of fish is going to be important as well. And we're going to catch bigger fish on the flavoured pellets. You know, we're going to catch some skimmers as well. A skimmer's going to show up on one particular pellet. Look at that. Not put that one down and the other rod's going. Unreal. So unhook this guy. The other rod's going, so I'll just hold this fella up for you. Lovely little mirror carp, about £2. And it's time. I mean, this is. So you can see the flavoured pellets weren't far behind that time, were they? So first bite on the unflavoured pellets, that chuck. 2.5 minutes, and then 3 minutes, 30 seconds later, a bite on the flavoured stuff. Feels a tiny bit bigger, not massive. I mean, the first two fish have been what, £2.5, £3? Just take my time, see if we can I've never really fished with 2 rods before, but I suppose you can be quite busy if you get bites like this all day. Lovely little fish. Yeah, just a tiny bit bigger. There we go. A tiny bit bigger. It's just he's flipping around a bit. Let's get the hook out of you, mate. So there we go, tiny bit bigger. I'm not gonna, don't need to show you fully, but there you go. Lovely little mirror carp. About £4 that one. So 2-1 to the flavoured pellets. It's early days yet. So we're going to load up both feeders at the same time again. I'm trying to cast them in almost, as close to each other as possible time-wise. I don't want one feeder to be sitting there for a minute or so longer than the other one. Try and make it a fair test. Little tiny bit, few pellets in the mould, pellet in, fill the rest of the mould up, just clean it off a little bit. Right, I chucked the left hand one first last time, so we'll chuck this one first this time. There you go, put him down. Put that fella down there. Right, we're fishing, stopwatch on. And let's see how long it takes for a bite this time. One thing I will say is the signs look good for a good day's fishing. I've had 3 fish already. Not had any other indications like line bites or anything. The tip's just obviously towed around with a fish on, but I think there's a few fish out there. Would be really nice to catch some big fish. There is some massive fish in this lake, so it'd be nice to catch some big fish. I think it's just really interesting to do this sort of experiment. So rare. I never fish 2 rods. So rare to get this opportunity. Obviously when we practice as a team, maybe one guy will be fishing one bait, one guy will be fishing another bait. You get a good reflection doing that sort of thing, but never in the same peg. And obviously anglers do things slightly different as well, so it's nice to do things exactly the same but just with tiny tweaks on the bait. Be interesting to see what the bite time is as well on this chuck. Obviously both bites last time became sort of within 3 minutes, so we're just over 3 minutes now. And that's why it's really good to use a stopwatch, because if I was fishing a competition, I wouldn't want to waste time with my bait in the water when I know I'm not going to get a bite. So use a stopwatch. If every bite's coming at a certain point, there we go. So 3 minutes 20, he's just dropped off, but that was a carp. So if every bite comes at a certain point, say for instance every bite comes at 3 minutes, there's no point leaving your bait in for sort of like more than 5 minutes. You obviously give the fish an extra couple of minutes to find your bait, but it's nice to be able to read your swim. And the stopwatch helps you do that. Just helps you waste less time during the day. Shame we lost that one, but it's the name of the game. So I'll reel the right hand rod in. Again, we're going to cast it at the same time. I don't know if we can count that as a fish, can we, for the flavoured pellets? Although it's a bite, isn't it? Should we count bites or fish? So while the rods are out, let me talk to you about the kit we're using. Standard method feeder kit. Using a little Preston method feeder, 30 grammer. I've put a guru stem in it, and I've actually changed the elastic. So it's a bit of an amalgamation of a load of different products. I've actually changed the elastic to some lighter elastic. It's the pink shock core from Midi. It's just a little bit lighter. It means I can use a shorter stem, and means that I'm not going to, well, I'm going to lessen the risk of bumping skimmers, smaller carp. I can use a slightly smaller hook as well by using that lighter elastic in the feeder. Oh, look at that. Really, really good fishing now. Just over a minute for that bite. Flavoured side again, really interesting that is. So let's go around talking about the gear. So I've got 0.14 hook length. I've only got a 3-inch hook length. A lot of people probably use a 4-inch for carp, but I like a 3-inch when you're targeting sort of a mixture of sizes of carp. If I was targeting really big fish, sort of like Boddington style fish, double figure fish, then fair enough, I'd use a 4-incher. But when you're targeting sort of like anything really, skimmers, smaller carp, the bigger carp, a 3-inch hook length's brilliant. And I've got a size 16 hook on with a bait band on. And that's just because I might use a sort of like a little wafter or something like that normally, but for the interest of today, just to try and keep everything as neutral as possible and as fair as possible, I'm using just a 6mm banded pellet, a standard coarse pellet as a hook bait. See if we can get this fella in. Probably see there the elastic stretching nicely, doing its job. You know, plenty of elastic out there, which means that the feeder's well away from the fish when you're playing it. Another lovely little mirror carp. See if we can hold him up for you. Lovely little mirror carp, look, about £3. Really quick bite that was, unbelievably quick, just over a minute. So the unflavoured pellets aren't faring very well, are they? One fish at the minute. And if we're not careful, we might end up losing count on the flavoured. And I think what we'll do is, if this pattern carries on, we'll swap the rods over. Well, I'm not going to swap the rods over, I'll swap the baits over. I'll fish the flavoured pellets on the right hand side, the unflavoured on the opposite side. But we'll see how we go for a little bit. I think if it becomes a bit of a whitewash, we'll have to start doing that.
Empty hearts and neon lights, they're playing with my mind. Gotta get out of here tonight. Oh, I wanna run off and fly, and I'll tell myself it's fine to be alone, just to find somewhere that finally feels like home.
So folks, this is now proving one thing: either we're chucking on a little shoulder fish to the left, or the flavouring is better than the unflavoured pellets, because let's face it, it is a bit of a whitewash now. So now's the time. I think this is 4 fishing 4 chucks on the left hand rod. Now's the time to swap the pellets over, and start having a chuck on the right hand rod with some flavoured bait. Again, not a big fish, but a carp nonetheless. And I just wonder if, because these are small fish and they're all sort of like ganged together, just wonder if there's a little pod of fish out there. So we definitely need to change the rods over. Put him back. So I'll reel in that right hand rod, swap the baits over, and see if we can still get the same results on that left hand rod with the unflavoured pellets. We've swapped the pellets round. Actually, to make things easier in my head, I've swapped the tubs round on the side tray, so I haven't got to think too much about it when I load the pellets. I've already got the right hand swim loaded up. So just to clarify, we're now chucking unflavoured pellets on the left hand swim where we've caught most fish, and we're going to chuck flavoured pellets with the pellet soak on the right hand swim where we've only caught one fish. So out with the unflavoured. Got a bit of a Joe Mangle there around the reel. And now out with the flavoured. Let's see if it makes a difference. It might take a little bit of time, because obviously we've put some flavouring in, but we'll see, won't we? Be interesting to see. Let's put it that way. Pull that around there a bit. Nearly forgot the stopwatch. Most important. So I don't think it's the end of the world if we do get a bite quite quick on the left hand rod, because I still think there might be a few fish there just hanging around. Obviously they're still feeding. We've fed a bit of bait out there after all, so I still think there'll be a few fish hanging around there, but it'd be interesting to see if they make a beeline 20 yards to the right to go to the flavoured bait. Maybe after a couple of chucks that might be the case, but we'll see. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to be conclusive if the right hand rod toes round now first chuck, but it'll add plenty of weight to the argument to use some flavourings on your bait. And that was a quick bite, you know, just over a minute. The wind's just dropped a little bit, so the ripple wasn't taking the line under the surface, so it just meant I had to dunk the rod a little bit. And as I was dunking the rod under the surface, the tip could feel the rod bucking in my hand as the tip was pulling round. Again, not big fish, they're not big fish today, but I still think it's a good test. It's a good test. Obviously there's no point doing this sort of thing if you're not going to get a bite. Still put up a nice scrap under the rod tip, every fish does. Obviously we're only using a 16 hook, so still want to take our time with a fish and make sure they come out, even though it's not a match and we're just messing around really. Still nice to get the fish out. Feel like a game of tennis, looking between the two rods all the time, seeing which one's going to go first. I'll have neck ache by the end of today. Let's just unhook this guy. See if I can hold him up. Nice sort of scaly little common carp. So that's interesting, and I think reel this one in now. Oh, we've got one. Look at that. I'll tell you what, this might not be a carp, you know. This might be a skimmer just hanging on the end. I thought the tip had dropped a little bit, just a little bit of a drop back. Is it a carp? No, a bream. So, not that we're targeting bream, but it's nice to catch one anyway. This is the only bream we've had today, and it's obviously come when we've switched to the standard fishery pellets, no flavouring, over that swim where we've been fishing with the flavouring. Still a nice fish, look. 2.5, £3. Beautiful fish. Well worth catching in a match, let me tell you. So we'll go repeat the process again. I mean, after all, it's carp we're interested in.
I hate all this overthinking. The more I swim, the more I'm sinking. Take me to a world of silver. No more heartbreaks, tears, painkillers. Take me somewhere unfamiliar. Bring me back to.
So then, folks, I think that might be the nail in the coffin for the unflavoured pellets. So we've had 3 chucks now, after swapping the lines. And the flavoured baits come out top again. Obviously we had that skimmer on the left hand swim, but we were catching carp, you know, before we switched, so I'm not getting too excited about that. And this is the second carp on the swim that was pretty devoid, to be honest, early on. I'm not saying obviously flavouring your bait's the be all and end all, but it definitely helps. You know, I was really sceptical up until maybe 18 months ago. We fished quite a few matches and it really made a difference in those matches. And since then we've started messing around with flavourings a lot. I think it makes a big difference on certain venues. And to be fair, I'm not even saying that the flavouring I've used has been, you know, the be all and end all as well. You know, there's plenty of other flavourings out there. And it's worth messing around with certain things, because you never quite know what's going to work on the venue that you visit. Look at that. Not a big fish again, but maybe about £4, and I think that's probably the biggest fish of the day. Had a lot of little fish today, and it's a nice pretty fish. So I think this fella is a nice fish to end on. I'm not saying it's conclusive, but from now on I'll be putting flavourings on my baits on certain venues from now on. Definitely when you're fishing a feeder, I think it helps. Obviously you're hoping fish are going to find your bait maybe from quite a distance away, so I think it really helps in those situations. As I say, I don't think the flavouring we've used today is the be all and end all. There's loads of other flavourings that you could be using, and I think it could be really interesting. Let's put this fish back while we're talking. I think it could be really interesting, here we go mate, to go out and maybe put flavourings against each other. So I think next time we'll go out and do this sort of thing, I'll use a flavouring I've used today, but I'll grab another flavouring off the shelf and try 2 flavourings next to each other, and we'll see which flavouring comes out on top. I think that could be a really interesting day. I think water conditions are going to make a difference. The colour of the water, the temperature of the water, all those things are going to be factors when it comes down to flavourings. But I think we've got the experiment about right today. Plain baits with obviously the flavouring on top. We've used this identical kit, we've chucked in the same place, we've rotated the lines. I mean, if you think I could have done anything different, let me know, because I'm racking my brains trying to think of some way to make it even fairer, but I think I've made it as fair as possible. Until next time guys, tight lines.